I met Kyle at work, and from the moment we started dating, everything seemed perfect. We had an easy connection, a kind of chemistry that felt effortless. We enjoyed each other's company, had similar interests, and our relationship flowed naturally. He was thoughtful, dependable, and genuinely cared for me. I was proud to be with him, and for months, everything in our relationship was smooth sailing. I couldn't have been happier. As the holidays approached last year, I decided it was time for Kyle to meet my family. Thanksgiving seemed like the perfect occasion to introduce him. My family always had a big Thanksgiving dinner, with everyone gathering at my parents' house. It was one of those traditions that felt sacred, and I thought it was a good opportunity to take the next step in our relationship. I had already told my family about Kyle, and while they seemed curious, they had no real objections. My parents had always been a bit conservative in their views, but they trusted me to make my own decisions. Or so I thought. The day started off perfectly. We arrived at my parents' house, and everything felt normal. My mom welcomed us with her usual warmth, my siblings were friendly, and Kyle fit in well. He was polite, made an effort to engage with everyone, and seemed comfortable being there. It felt like it was going to be one of those perfect holiday memories. The meal was delicious, the conversation flowed easily, and I was relieved that my family seemed to be embracing Kyle. But then, during the lull after dinner when everyone was lounging in the living room, things started to shift. Kyle had spilled some cranberry sauce on his shirt and went to the guest room to change. I didn't think anything of it. He came back a few minutes later, wearing a different shirt, and we continued chatting as if nothing had happened. I didn't realize anything was wrong until I glanced at my dad. He was staring at Kyle, his brow furrowed, eyes narrow with suspicion. At first, I thought maybe Kyle had said something to offend him, though I couldn't imagine what. My dad wasn't confrontational, but there was something in his expression that made me uneasy. He kept looking at Kyle's back, and then I noticed it. Kyle's tattoo was slightly visible at the collar of his shirt. Kyle's tattoo was nothing special, just his initials, KL, in bold letters on his upper back. He had explained it to me early in our relationship. It was something he'd gotten during a rough time in his life, a reminder to stay true to himself. It wasn't flashy or intricate, just a personal symbol that meant something to him. I never gave it much thought, but apparently, my dad did. Later that evening, as the guests started leaving and the house began to quiet down, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message in our family group chat. I opened it, expecting to see something mundane, like a picture from dinner or a thank you for hosting. Instead, I saw my dad's message, and my heart sank. I noticed Kyle's tattoo today. It's concerning. I did some research, and it seems like a symbol used by certain groups. We need to talk about this. I stared at the message in disbelief. What on earth was he talking about? Kyle's initials? It wasn't even close to resembling any kind of symbol. It was literally just 2 letters. I quickly replied, trying to dismiss his concerns. I told him it was just Kyle's initials, nothing more, and that there was no hidden meaning behind it. But my dad wasn't convinced. In the days that followed, my dad's suspicions only grew. He continued posting links to random conspiracy websites in the group chat, suggesting that Kyle's tattoo could be a sign of something more sinister, like a secret society or a cult. It was completely absurd. My siblings found it ridiculous too, but they mostly stayed quiet, not wanting to get caught in the middle of the argument. My mom, however, sided with my dad. She trusted his judgment and believed that he had uncovered something serious. I tried explaining it to them over and over again. Kyle wasn't involved in anything shady. His tattoo was just a personal reminder, nothing more. But they refused to listen. My dad had always been the type to latch onto an idea and not let go, and once he was convinced of something, there was no changing his mind. The tension between us grew. Every time I visited my parents or talked to them on the phone, the conversation inevitably circled back to Kyle's tattoo. My dad would ask if I had spoken to Kyle about it, if I had asked him to remove it. I told him repeatedly that I wouldn't do that. It was Kyle's body, his choice, and I wasn't going to pressure him into removing something that held personal significance for him just to ease my dad's irrational fears. But my dad wouldn't let it go. He became more adamant, saying that if Kyle wanted to continue being a part of my life, he would need to remove the tattoo. My mom echoed his sentiments, though she was less forceful about it. They framed it as a matter of concern for my well-being, as if Kyle's tattoo posed some kind of threat to my safety or future. It was utterly absurd, but they were convinced that they were doing the right thing. I tried to reason with them, to explain that their fears were completely unfounded. I pointed out how irrational it was to assume that Kyle, who had done nothing but treat me with kindness and respect, was secretly involved in something dangerous because of 2 letters inked on his back. But logic didn't seem to matter. My dad was set in his beliefs, and my mom followed his lead. The situation escalated to the point where I had to make a choice. My dad made it clear that he wouldn't accept Kyle into the family as long as he had that tattoo. He gave me an ultimatum, subtly at first, but then more directly as the weeks went on. He wouldn't forbid me from seeing Kyle, but he made it clear that he didn't approve of the relationship unless Kyle got rid of the tattoo. It was a ridiculous request. There was no way I was going to ask Kyle to do something like that. I loved him for who he was, tattoo and all. It wasn't just about the tattoo, it was about my parents trying to control a part of my relationship that had nothing to do with them. I wasn't going to let them dictate something so personal. Eventually, I had to confront the reality that my relationship with my parents might never be the same. I stopped going to their house as often, stopped answering their calls as frequently. Every conversation felt like a battle, every visit felt strained. The holidays, which had always been a time for family and togetherness, now felt like a source of stress and tension. It hurt to pull away from them, but I couldn't let their unfounded paranoia ruin my relationship. Kyle, for his part, was supportive through it all. He knew what was going on, and while he found the whole thing absurd, he never pressured me to choose between him and my family. He let me navigate the situation in my own way, which only reinforced how much I cared for him. He was patient, understanding, and never once made me feel like I had to prove anything to him. He knew that I was caught in a difficult position, and he gave me the space I needed to figure it out. As time passed, the tension with my parents didn't completely disappear, but it did start to fade. They never apologized or admitted that they had been wrong about Kyle's tattoo, but they did eventually stop bringing it up. I think they realized that I wasn't going to back down, and that pushing the issue further would only drive me further away. It wasn't the resolution I had hoped for, but it was enough to keep the peace for now. The whole experience left me with a bitter taste in my mouth. I had always thought of my parents as reasonable people, but their reaction to something as trivial as a tattoo showed me a side of them I hadn't seen before. It made me question how much of their approval I really needed, and whether I could ever fully reconcile their beliefs with my own. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to let their irrational fears dictate my happiness. Safe, comfortable topics, but where's the fun in that?